the nerdy Hallisimmer.
Welcome, guys. We're looking at the new AS350 B3 by Cowansim. Just downloaded it and I'm checking out the 3D model. I do have the feeling that the tail rotor seems to be a little bit massive. The aircraft comes with 4K texturing. There is no 2K version as of yet. Cowansim's helicopter flight models can be quite demanding of your hardware, so you might experience a frame rate drop. That is if you're running an older system, of course. For a side-by-side comparison with the Dreamfoils AS350 for X-Plane 10, most notably Cowansim's version has the more pointed nose, which is more accurate compared to the real-life counterpart. And overall it looks very good. I mean, it's nothing special, it's an A-star, but you will be glad to hear that you get a lot of liveries with your download. There are quite a few click spots. I haven't found them all yet. You can see the sliding doors and there seems to be some baggage compartment. If the external click spots don't work for you, make sure that you use the Vulcan drivers. Oops, I added something. Seems to be like an engine inlet cover of some sort. Alright, I think that this is new. I can add or remove covers and tie downs individually if I find the respective click spots. So this is going to be a quick and dirty first flight review, so I might miss some of the details. Also checking the flight model for performance accuracy might take some time, so I may add a more thorough review later on. I'm just fiddling around trying to figure out how to open the baggage compartment. I might want to get the door out of the way. Alright, apparently that is something new. You have to individually open each one of those latches in order to be able to look inside the baggage compartment, which looks quite detailed. No complaints about the 3D model, except maybe for the tail rotor, which seems to be a little bit big for my taste. Let's jump in. The interior looks a little bland and dark, however, everything's where it's supposed to be. There is a striking similarity between this model and the AS350 B3 model that has just been released as a freeware pre-alpha by HSF on the X-Plane forum. However, this is not a B2, it's a B3 with a rotor brake and the fuel cut-off lever on the overhead panel, as well as the engine start switch. As I was recording this video, I made a mistake and ended up with no sounds whatsoever. I'm very sorry about that. I have added sound for immersion during editing, and it is the actual sound of Cowansim's AS350 B3, however, don't expect it to react to what's happening on the screen. Now let's start her up. Instead of the huge switch column on the pedestal, we have the more modern arrangement of switches, battery to on. The twist grip of the A-star has two positions, idle and flight. Make sure that it is in idle mode. Next, we're going to test the accumulator test switch for 2 seconds, which will depressurize the yaw hydraulic accumulator in order to center the yaw pedals. Warning lights test, everything should light up, and we should see the test screens on the VEMD. Next is the fire test switch. We should see a caution advisory on the caution panel, and we should hear an oral warning, which I don't recall hearing in the game. Fuel pumps to on and time for 30 seconds. And don't forget the anti-collision lights, of course. Now the starter is inhibited as long as the rotor brake is not secured. You have to press the switch on the brake and make sure that it is disengaged. Engine start switch to on, and you would actually keep your hand up there while monitoring the parameters shown on the VEMD. So if anything should go wrong, you can abort the starter procedure. However, the A-star is equipped with a FADEC system, so everything should run smoothly. At about 20% N1, the rotors should start to turn, which they do. Remember, in French-built helicopters, the main rotor turns in a clockwise direction, meaning that our power pedal will be the right pedal. We can see heat blur from the engine exhaust and rather abrupt transition of rotor animation here. The rotor disc is tilted to the side, but that's because my cyclic isn't centered yet. Let's close the doors. Once T4, the exhaust gas temperature has stabilized, it is time to close the switch guard on the engine start switch, the red one. Whoops, doesn't seem to be animated. I just stopped the engine actually. Funnily enough, I just reactivated the engine start switch and the helicopter doesn't seem to bother. It just starts up again. Seeing as it is part of the checklist of the A-Star, it would be nice if the switch guard of the starter switch would actually be operable. Generators, avionics, and the horn switch to on. As usual for Cowansims helicopters, it does come with an SAS, so a stability augmentation system that you can use if you want to. That's the one that's blinking there. Transponder to on. Now for the hydraulics check before takeoff. During testing of the hydraulic accumulators, it is actually possible for the collective to move. Now that is undesirable, so there is a latch securing the collective in the fold down position. Just make sure to free the collective before takeoff or nothing will happen. Right, you actually have to keep it pressed apparently. Now you should hear a gong, which I didn't hear, and there doesn't seem to be any effect on the flight controls. Next, isolating the hydraulic pressure by clicking the switch on the collective lever. Again, we should hear an aural warning and we should see an indication on the caution light panel. In Dreamfoils' rendition of the A-Star for X-Plane 10, you could actually see that the controls were harder to move when you did the hydraulic tests. But that's about all you can do within a desktop simulator. Now rolling on the twist grip to the flight mode, and you can see that the rotor RPM is rising. No surprises on startup, pretty close to real life. The only thing that I noticed is the missing gong sounds of the hydraulic switches and the fire test switch. And it would be nice if the switch guard of the engine starter switch would actually be simulated. Now remember, there is a collective lock latch that you have to disengage in order to be able to fly. The A-Star is very sensitive on the cyclic, so that's what I expect here. I'm on my mobile setup, so not on my full-size controls, so I'm going to be extra careful. I am anticipating right power pedal, and I'm going to displace the cyclic a little bit to the right and aft of center. And there we go, we're up. Yes, it is pretty sensitive, however also quite stable. I have to hover right, skid low. I'm gonna keep it in a stable hover here and set it down again. The aircraft reacts very precisely to cyclic inputs. Keep the cyclic still, no over controlling. I'm gonna set it down now, slowly reducing collective. Now the A-Star is infamous for being difficult to control on set down. So when you leave the stable hover for touchdown, you might get into what is commonly known as the A-Star dance. Now this characteristic was definitely present in Dreamfoils' X-Plane 10 version. Cowansim's flight model doesn't seem to show that squirrely behavior at all. It was very easy to set down. Lake and breeze. Let's get going one more time. Now there's one thing I find just like in Cowansim's MD500E. It's a little hard to describe what I mean, so bear with me. To me it seems like that the underlying platform or the underlying flight model is very stable, sort of even stabilized. And then there is this additional layer that sort of gives a little twitchiness to your control inputs. but it doesn't seem to affect the overall stability of the helicopter. I don't know if that's how the X-Plane plane maker works, and if my perception is even accurate. It's sort of just a subjective, to me it feels like statement. Let's do a pedal turn here. Still takes some getting used to, I guess, but the overall stability is pretty good. I find it rather easy to control, even without my full-size controls. However, you might struggle if you are not used to helicopters with a very sensitive cyclic. Remember only to do very small and precise inputs whenever you need them. Don't stir the pot. Now, sometimes it still feels a little weird to me. I might just have to get used to it, but sometimes it feels just a little as if the aircraft was flying on rails, if you know what I mean. It also seems to lack a little bit of lateral inertia every now and then. I'm gonna test for the pendulum effect. I'm gonna nudge the cyclic forward and I will wait for the aircraft to pitch up and swing back. There it is. I'll try one more time. Yep, the pendulum effect is definitely noticeable. Okay, enough hover work, let's go fly. You can see me over control here in a second. This sort of demonstrates what I was talking about earlier. I inadvertently bank hard to the right here, and the helicopter doesn't seem to really take over the inertia of that movement. Instead, it sort of maintains its steady course. This is ETL, by the way. It is a quick and powerful aircraft. Now let's slow her down. I reduce collective and pull aft on the stick to keep my altitude, and I also push in a little bit of left pedal. You can see it takes quite a while to slow this one down. So far very easy to control. I just need to be careful not to over control on my small desktop size joystick. Still got a little forward motion. The set down is pretty non-significant in this one. So definitely much easier to land than Dreamfoils AS350. Taking off once more. going to try to do better on my transition into forward flight this time. So my control inputs on the previous try were probably a little excessive, so this time less is more. Yep, that looks much better now. So this was my first time flying the Cowansim AS350 B3, which was released just this morning. I'm not super stoked about this flight model as of yet, maybe it just takes some getting used to. It is definitely flyable and very controllable even without full-sized controls. To me it just seems to behave and move a little weird every now and then, especially during hover work. Be sure to let me know how it works for you in the comments. I would have expected to hear a warning gong during the fire test and the hydraulics test. Now for setting up the helicopter with an X-plane, be sure to use the throttle 2 axis for the twist grip, and the experimental flight model is used automatically by Cowansims plugin, so you do not have to check that box. I always like to fly Dreamfoils AS50, even though it was never officially ported over to X-Plane 11, and it certainly behaves weird in some regimes of the flight envelope. So when it was rumored that Cowansim actually took it on himself to bring us the long-awaited AS50 for X-Plane 11, I was pretty stoked to hear that. Twist grip to idle and wait for 30 seconds before shutdown. Still, I have to say that this release did not outright convince me. So I'm going to give it a few more hours with full-size controls, and I plan to do a more thorough review for you guys in the near future. At the end of this video I'm going to quickly show you how to do the inbuilt performance test with the VEMD. Funny thing, as I was trying to figure out whether or not I could close the friction on the cyclic, I realized that you are actually able to move the pilot seat. See that? Wicked. After switching off avionics and radios and waiting for 30 seconds, you can switch off the engine start switch, which will kill the engine. And once rotor RPM is below 120 to 130, you can use the rotor brake to stop the rotors. So all in all, it's kind of a mixed bag. I like the exterior 3D model, however the interior of the aircraft is sort of I also can't say that I love the way that it handles, however I'm going to give it a little bit more time. Let me know what you all think about Cowansim's latest work of art in the comments. Now we are heavily overloaded at Everest Base Camp, but I want to show you something. A lot of you people will like this. You get the option to choose an EMS version. You can just activate this in the drop-down menu, along with lots of other cool customization options. Now doing a quick and easy performance check, we are definitely way too heavy to hover in ground effect at an altitude of about 1,700 feet. So I should not be able to get this aircraft off the ground without damaging the engine. Sort of a quick test for the accuracy of the helicopter flight model in terms of performance. Of course, you would have to follow it up by more intense testing. Yep, we're already over-torquing, and you would hear the horn if I hadn't screwed up my sounds. Again, sorry about that. The engine power check, just make sure that the demisting and heating rheostats are closed. Now, given the labeling, it seems to me that they work the wrong way. Open is closed and vice versa. Now you hit the scroll button on the VEMD and the lower screen will show you the engine power check status bar. And as you can see, as I enter a stable hover, you can see the VEMD performing the engine power check. Once the check is done, the screen shows you the performance data that you can compare to the ones that you find in the flight manual.